This new release proved that Gibson listened to us. Welcome back, troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. I was hypercritical of one of the guitars out of this series, so much that I said Gibson should discontinue it, but let's go ahead and check out our newest iteration. So, this is a Les Paul Standard Faded. We've talked about these in the past, but we're reviewing a different neck style this time, this one being the 60s neck. Now, if you don't know what a faded series guitar is, it means we have a satin finish. So it's a little bit more dull than the full gloss, gives it that nice vintage appearance. To my knowledge, these first came out around 2005, and the first 2 years were very sought after because they still only had 9-hole weight relief before they swapped into the whole chambering. Now, what makes it different with the new modern age standard faded is that they're complete solid bodies, and people just love the feel of satin finishes. If you've always found that, the neck feels sticky to me, you're going to love these things for that reason. And you can save yourself a little bit of money. These are $2,299 brand new, which is about $300 cheaper than even your cheapest plain maple top option. And as you can see here, this one is far from plain. It's got a really nice tight pinstripey top, and it's got lots of movement to it. And if you want to, you can take these to town and polish them up like we did in the first episode of one of these to give you a nice semi-gloss finish. And naturally, as you play these, they'll buff up in high traffic areas, so that's something else to keep in mind, whether you like that or not. It's going to occur. But this revival of the series first launched in October of 2022, and at that time you had a 60s Les Paul in the vintage cherry sunburst finish, and the 50s neck only in vintage honeyburst. They also had an SG61 with a Maestro Vibrola for about $2,200. That is the model I said should be discontinued. The other thing that all Gen 1s had in common is they did not have covers on the pickups. I assume that helped people visualize that, hey, something's different about that guitar when they're just looking at stock photos online. But then Generation 2 rolls around, which I believe was in late 2024, where we now have 2 color options on the 60s, the vintage cherry sunburst and the vintage bourbon burst. The 50 standard then had the same vintage honey burst, and now a vintage tobacco burst. And they gave us our pickup covers back. So now we need to talk about our new ones. I'm not sure if it's accurate to call this Generation 3 because almost everything's changed about these. We have another finish that looks very similar to the others but has a different name. Tonight we're reviewing the 60s Iced Tea, but if you're into the 50s neck, they also have a Dirty Lemon burst, but the big one is actually the 61 SG. They're now giving us a non-Vibrola unit for $500 less, and it comes with a case. Now that guitar makes a little bit more sense on the market, in my opinion. It's worth mentioning these 3 new ones are Gibson.com and Garage exclusives, so you're not going to find these at other dealers. At this time, anyway. And if that's all that was different this time, probably wouldn't have done this review. However, they've changed our pickups. Instead of having the regular 50s or 60s standard pickups, we've put Underwound 57 Classics in here. And I really like 57 Classic pickups, and I think they're underutilized, and I think Gibson's starting to realize that because they're slowly bringing them back to more models. So now, just outside of the finish choice, you might prefer this because of the pickups that it has. And just like Gen 2, we still retain pickup covers. And as far as the back on this one, it's a nice cherry red. And I like that even at our slightly reduced price on these, they don't strip away the case or anything. Although, if we could save like another $200 and have one of those nice Gibson gig bags, I could see that being even more enticing for someone. But as far as our case candy, inside that compartment sleeps a baggie. Inside that baggie sleeps all of this. Gibson multi-tool, we've got a silica packet, Gibson strap, polishing cloth, blank truss rod cover, just in case you don't dig the branded one. Marketing information, safety manual, case keys, a pick guard. You know, I didn't even consider that could be another selling factor for someone. These aren't drilled from the factory, and there's a lot of guys that are like, oh man, I hate Gibson USA's because they always put the pick guard on them. Well, this is a model you can technically get it without, but if you're curious what it'd look like with it on, it would look something like this, which, yeah, I think that looks nice. However, with the dulled finish, something about that raw rocker look looks good to me. And lastly, we've got the pre-pack checklist and warranty information all filled out. And for historical proof and preservation, here's the original box tag on this one, which is cool. It even makes mention of our pickups. A brief history out of the way. What are my first impressions of this particular one straight out of the box? It's really nice and lightweight, like not too light, not too heavy. It's about where I would expect for a Les Paul. I like the feeling of the satin finish. Maybe don't love the look of it. I'm always a big proponent of polishing these tops up because it's eventually going to happen in your armwear area anyway. But I don't think I'm going to do that today. But I do notice, since this is such a thin finish and you don't have that really thick clear coat layer, you can feel a slight ridge between where the neck finish ends and the binding begins. So if that bugs you, yeah, I think technically you could sand it down a little. But let's go ahead and throw this over on the workbench to take an individual look at its parts and specs and get a nitty-gritty detailed analysis of it. The longer I look at this guitar, the more and more I like it. It's just got such a unique top, lots of characteristics within it. But let's go ahead and check out these pickups. Is it actually what they advertised it as? Sure enough, 57 Classic UW, standing for Underwound in our neck, and the exact same in the bridge pickup cavity. That's just great that these are different from previous generations, outside of just adding a new color. But to me, these are looking like they might be wax potted, because you can see some residue from that process on both of our pickups. I believe most 57 Classics are around 7.5, so our bridge is 7.17, the neck 7.2, so not underwound by a lot, but enough to say that they are. You also have to remember that's within the circuit, so the actual reading, if we just took it from the pickup itself, would probably be around 7-ish. Now we can look at our cavities. It says SI in here, likely for satin iced tea. And here we can see that maple top joining onto our mahogany body. Now, as compared to the mahogany top that we reviewed a couple of days ago, the routing job is a little bit cleaner on this one, but we do have some mild roughness over here that looks like you could clean that out yourself. Same things are true in our bridge pickup cavity. Just a little bit of frilliness down here, but otherwise nice and smooth. But here's a better look at our two-piece maple top on our solid mahogany body. And here's our product code. LPS for Les Paul Standard, 6 for 60s neck, F for faded, and 57. That's interesting. They actually code for the 57 Classic pickups there, and then 25 for the model year. Cool. Our bridge is the standard full-weight Gibson ABR1, mounted on Nashville-style bushings. And we've got that typical lightweight tailpiece by API. As far as our controls, no fancy push-pulls on the regular Les Paul Standard. You have to step up to the modern or down to a studio if you want that. That's just volume tone for neck and bridge. Let's just take a second to appreciate this top. Pinstripey flame for the most part, but great wood grain underneath. They're definitely not skimping, at least not on this particular top. To be fair, the whole reason why I did this review is I had called up the garage to see if they had a nice one. So if you don't like ordering blind off of Gibson.com because you want to know the weight or something, I just suggest calling up the garage. That's the best way to get their exclusives. And when they showed me the photo of this one, it's like, yeah, let's go ahead and do that. Now, the way Gibson does their lacquer finishes, it's very common to get some lacquer sinking effect into the wood grain. So keep that in mind if you're ordering one of these standard fadeds. Maple doesn't have as porous of grain as like the mahogany that we'll see on the back, but there is still some of that here. I mainly noticed it around the neck, and I think the reason why it stands out here so much and looks like an orange peel is because they have to sand the top right here. So a Les Paul has a carved top where it goes up and down, but right here to get the neck angle right, they actually sand it down in this area. So it carves up and then it goes flat. So I think that's why we see so many finish anomalies in that area, if you want a technical explanation, I guess you could say. But moving on from our two-piece maple top and solid mahogany body, we've got that mahogany neck with rosewood fretboard. Here's another thing that this one just does really well. It's got great streakiness to it, good colorations, a little bit of light brown and dark brown mixed in. This has not been conditioned or anything. As far as tooling marks and very discerning light, I don't notice anything out of the ordinary. It actually looks pretty good. I measure 1.69 inches at the nut, increasing to 2.06 at the 12, 0.82 first fret neck depth, and stay skinny, 0.91 at the 12. And it's our usual 24 3/4 inch scale length with 12-inch fretboard radius. Here's a look at that neck profile at the 1st fret and the 12th fret. Just maintains a nice C shape, but gets a little bit flatter on the back as you go up towards the 12th. So far, the only downside I'm really noticing between this and a full gloss is you have that slight ridge. I especially notice it on this side. It's just a small lipped ridge. I don't think it'll really affect anybody's playing, but I could see how somebody would be like, I wish that was sanded a bit more flush. But jumping up to our headstock, these are also satin like the rest of the guitar. Here's a closer look at our standard truss rod cover. And our truss rod cavity looks way cleaner on this example. And we've got our silk screen and still Gibson mother of pearl logo. They have not downgraded you to a decal or anything like that. And we've got Grover tuners on the 60s model. Moving on to the back, I would say they matched up the two-piece body very well. I can't even see a seam line until I look on the end grain, and even then, you gotta be looking because the red finish is a bit dark. But here's what we were talking about earlier, how you can see the wood grain if you get it in the light. There's a sinking effect. That's just how Gibson's been doing it for quite some time lately. But here you can see your thin binding in the cutaway, just barely, and the rest of our goodness on the side. I like the wood grain over here. It looks like it'll have maybe a little bit of flame dancing to it if you take it outside in the sun. This is just such a great example. You can always tell when a guitar is one of the good ones just as soon as you touch it. And so far, I haven't even plugged this thing in. I just know I'm going to enjoy this. As far as our electronics, you've got your Gibson branded pots and your orange drop caps. Everything's pretty basic in here. We can move up the back side of the neck, more the lacquer sinking effect. Now this does significantly change the feel of the guitar. Now good or bad, I'll leave that up to you. I think some people would actually like the slightly textured feel of this. Because that's the thing, mahogany has lots of porous grain to it, and this one is open wide. I think it'd be cool if they could offer a maple neck Les Paul standard in the future as another variation, because those feel a lot smoother if you don't like the textured feel. Because if we flip on over to the top here, you can tell. Once again, that's maple. It's the exact same finish, styling anyway, but this is just less porous of a material. Moving up the backside, we've got our Grover tuners and now our serial number, dating it to 2025, 113th day of the year. Initial batch, production number 90, made in USA. So overall, QC was much better on this one. But let's go ahead and see how much this one weighs. Yeah, I was thinking anywhere between 8.5 and 9. It's very nicely balanced, but just a hair under 9. So let's go ahead, plug it in, and hear how the Faded series sounds with the new Underwound 57 Classic pickups in it. That bridge pickup is very interesting. It's a more vintage tone than I'm used to hearing out of these 50s and 60s standards. The fun thing about playing that solo is you never know if I'm going after the live rendition or the studio recording. Good stuff. So there we go, our documentation is complete of the new Underwound 57 Classic Standard Faded. I know we've got so many options in the 50-60 standard range, but I would highly suggest this one if you're looking for a little bit more of a vintage aesthetic as far as the look as well as your tones, because I thought those sounded quite phenomenal, dirty and clean. But I've always been a big fan of 57 Classics, and I think they're underutilized in today's current market because they're all about those burst buckers. But overall, the feel of this one, I dig it. Nice light satin finish. You can save yourself a couple $100 or find one out of the demo shop. You can save even more there if you're looking for a traditional Les Paul. Yeah, I really don't think you can go wrong with one of these. But if you're interested in this exact demo unit, it will be available on my website, troglysguitarshow.com. Otherwise, I hope this video helped you make an informed decision whether one of these was right for you or not. And we'll catch you tomorrow on the next one. Take care.